Okay, welcome back. Matthew chapter 16, verse 1. The Pharisees and Sadducees came up, and testing Jesus, they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. But he replied to them, "When it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning there will be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening. Do you know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but cannot discern the signs of the times? An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and a sign will not be given it, except the sign of Jonah." And he left them and went away. The Pharisees asked for a sign just recently in chapter 12, and Jesus is basically saying the same thing here. Look, you guys have seen plenty of miracles. You won't believe the words that I'm saying, so I'm done giving you signs, except that he will come out of the tomb in 3 days like Jonah did with the great fish. That was still yet to come. But of course, they didn't know what he was talking about. Verse 5, "And the disciples came to the other side of the sea, but they had forgotten to bring any bread. And Jesus said to them, 'Watch out and be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees.' They began to discuss this among themselves, saying, 'He said that because we did not bring any bread.' But Jesus, aware of this, said, 'You men of little faith, why do you discuss among yourselves that you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000, and how many baskets full you picked up? Or the 7 loaves of the 4,000, and how many large baskets full you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread? But beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees.' Then they understood that he did not say to be aware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. False teaching can permeate and spread quickly, so it needs to be get rid of it. Verse 13. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' Caesarea Philippi was a district about 25 miles north of Galilee at the base of Mount Hermon. This was different from the city of Caesarea built by Herod on the Mediterranean coast. All right, verse 14. So Jesus just said, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' And they said, 'Some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets.' He said to them, 'But who do you say that I am?' Verse 16. Simon Peter answered, 'You are the Christ, the Son of the living God.' And Jesus said to him, 'Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven.' Then he warned the disciples that they should not tell no one that he was the Christ." Okay, so we have 2 Greek words used for rock here. In the reference to Peter, the Greek word Petros is used, meaning a small rock. However, the word used for the rock that the church would be built upon is Petra, and that means a movable rock. What Jesus was saying was that Peter would be used to help build the church upon Christ, and that's critical. The rest of the New Testament makes it exceptionally clear that this is the case. The binding and loosing comment has to do with the church's alignment with the will of God on earth. When the church says an unrepentant person is bound in sin, which they would be able to tell by their behavior and fruit, the church is saying what God says about that person. When the church acknowledges that a repentant person has been loosed from sin, which would be seen through their repentance and obedience, they're in agreement with God. Verse 21. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised up on the 3rd day. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord, this shall never happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's." All right, so we need to remember, Peter was a man. He was susceptible to ungodly and impulsive thoughts, just like you and I. And ironically, just after receiving a pat on the back from Jesus for the special revelation he had acknowledging that Jesus was the Christ in verse 16, we're reminded here of how quickly our flesh can deceive us. In this instance, this thought that Peter had came from his own mind and aligned with the plan of Satan, which is really what Jesus was calling out. Jesus would not tolerate any interference with the will of God for him. I don't think he was as mad at Peter here as he was at Satan, who he knew was among them and his disciples constantly. Jesus obviously was aware of all the spiritual interference taking place there. Verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Verse 25. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Jesus was repeating what he said back in chapter 10, that following him would come with a price, possibly even the ultimate sacrifice of losing one's own life. Verse 26. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds. Sobering thoughts right there. Verse 28. Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. We can know that verse 28 is a reference to the upcoming transfiguration because all three of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, make this comment just prior to the transfiguration event, which is for us is in the next chapter. This was an event that Peter, James, and John would witness just days after they saw what was going on here. So it's getting great. Love it. Hope you guys are enjoying it as well, and enjoy your week this week. Keep a special focus on Christ and what he did with Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and looking forward to it. God bless you. Take care.